this man doesn't normally ride Hondas either, Graham Crosby. But and 10 days ago wasn't destined to ride one in this race. Dennis Neal, team manager, and selected Suzuki 1000 as being the bike to ride, but then they changed. Crosby said, "I just do what I'm told." And they have a bit of a job in front of them, quite frankly, to catch bike 2 with Malcolm Campbell, Rod Cox, which has been running so well and is a few seconds in front, but if anybody can peel that margin back, it'll be this one. Graham Crosby on 31 now and still in 3rd place.
Lap 174 and bike 6, the Bob Holden. Roger Hayes' bike comes into the pits, and it's well short of the 3 hours that it needed to get through with only one more pit stop. So they're going to have to take 4 pit stops, and that's a major disaster for them. Roger Hayes was very happy, or was very keen to see whether the bike would do another 12 minutes on the track and get it to the 3 hour mark, but it's not to be. Now the tyre goes in, and it's a slow tyre change with the Suzuki. The exhaust pipe gets in the way. You have to drop the springs off, which is difficult. That's more bolts that have to be undone. Hayes already on the bike waiting to go, but 35 seconds so far gone. And the bike almost falls off its stand and runs right over it, and it's a 42-second stop, and that's not the sort of stop that wins Castrol 6 hours.
And the question there was, were they really finished with that pit stop? Because they looked to be still flustering around for bolts and hammering them in when Hayes took off on that bike.
It's interesting how when you get into a race situation, the best laid and rehearsed plans all go wrong. They were rehearsing yesterday. They had a best stop of 17 seconds late last night, and they reckon they could easily do it in around 22. A brilliantly conceived system of 2 dummy axles to keep spacers in position, and one punches the other out of the way, and then that is punched out of the way again when the axle goes back in. It's a very complex stop, but one which had really been thought through with some special tools and so on. And as I say, it gets into a race situation, and suddenly the time is doubled over what they did many times yesterday.
Yes, well, that seemed to be the real consensus of opinion when we were walking down through the pits late yesterday afternoon with all top teams practicing their rider and tyre changes, and they all commented the same way. Things would be a little bit different under race conditions, and we've seen that today.
Ron Bolden into the pits on bike 3, the Yamaha 900. Gary Coleman gets back on the machine. No suggestion of a rear tyre change on this machine. So it'll be a quick stop. 12 seconds so far gone. They can't find out how to start it. Gary Coleman being given instructions on where the start button is, and he's away in 18 seconds. Ron Bolden, how's the bike feeling?
Mate, the bike's performing very well. We're relying on brakes. We're not going to change a tyre. We're going to run through in the same tyre. So it's a little bit slippery, but the bike's performing really well. We're riding okay, and we just keep consistent and be there at the end.
Well, the Hondas are looking bulletproof all of a sudden. They weren't supposed to be doing that at this time.
There's still 3 hours to go, so we've got a lot of time left.
As Malcolm Campbell, the race leader, heads towards the halfway mark in the Castrol, 185 laps down. Bike number 2. Campbell and Cox on the 750, followed by bike number 11, Phyllis and French, another Honda, and another Honda in 3rd place, Crosby and Cole. 4th position, the Suzuki of Holden and Hayes, with Sharp and Willing just behind them on bike number 8, and on number 12, Sale and Paviel, with number 2, the race leader, Malcolm Campbell, coming into the pits.
Three hours and 40 seconds into the Castrol 6 hour, and Malcolm Campbell comes into the pits to hand over to Rod Cox. There'll be a tyre change. They're going to the 80 series Pirelli, which is the taller rear tyre, and one which could give the team engine problems later in the event because it demands that the bike rev harder. 22 seconds gone. Malcolm Campbell helping Rod Cox with the accelerator and also holding the fuel cap down, and it's a quick stop at 29 seconds. And Malcolm, what's gone wrong?
Oh, nothing's gone wrong, John.
You called out to him as he took
The
off.
cap didn't quite shut down properly, but he caught the message.
And he closed the cap himself as he took off.
Closed as he went up the hill then.
How's the bike feeling to you?
Really good. We tried to go through 2 sessions on the one tyre, which probably wasn't good lap times, but it's got us through with 3 fuel stops, where the other guys have got to make the extra stop. We'll have 2 new tyres on for the last 2 sessions, so I'm still fairly confident at the moment.
Rod Cox taking no time at all to slip into the saddle and gather his forces as he takes off again for the second half of this 6-hour endurance production bike race.
And Jeffrey Sale still in the saddle on bike number 12. Terry Paviel did the leading stint on that, the man who didn't start bike racing till he was 26 years of age. And now it's Jeffrey, who 10 years ago won the 250 class here with his older brother Murray, who had quite a deal of overseas experience, including running at Daytona. Jeffrey himself has been running 250cc World Championship events in past years, but has just about run out of money and had a wretched season. It was only weeks after he got back to Australia as he slots up. There he's got running around the outside of him.
That's a race leader.
The current race leader. And near him too was number 26, the Astley Moore Honda 750. But Sale, only weeks after arriving back in Australia, phoned his previous sponsor over in England, asking him how things were going at the bike, and discovered that they'd altered the rear suspension and the thing was now suddenly ultra competitive. And poor Jeffrey had been trying to qualify it all year and had failed to do so, and it wasn't him, it was the bike badly set up. They're presently running in 6th place outright in a race at the moment being dominated by the distinctive colouring of the Honda VF 750 V4. They only sold in that colour, although a number of the teams have done their own bits of artwork around them.
And for ABC sporting fans, don't forget this week, New South Wales Panasonic Open with highlights on Thursday and Friday night from about 11 o'clock and 11:25 on Friday. And on Saturday, our live coverage commencing at 1 o'clock for both Saturday and Sunday for the final 2 rounds. That's on Saturday and Sunday live with guest commentator Bobby Simpson, along with our normal golfing commentary team of Graham Dawson, Brian Crafter and Graham Marsh.
There are more Hondas in the Castrol 6-hour field than the rest of the makes put together. Amongst the rest of the makes are 2 Ducati 600 Pandas, brilliant little V-twin 4-strokes, developing only 58 horsepower at 8,500 RPM. This one, bike 19, is being ridden by Gary Gleason and Peter Mackay. It's currently lying in 17th position. It is the lightest bike in the race and probably one of the most delightful to ride. It weighs only 188 kilograms. Compare that to 218 kilograms for the Hondas and for the Yamahas. But it also develops the least power and has the worst power to weight ratio of 308.51 horsepower per ton. Compare that to the Suzuki, which develops 469 horsepower per ton. Nonetheless, for an enthusiast who's out for a Sunday ride in the Castrol 6-hour, it's a delightful bike to ride, and I'm sure that both Gleason and Mackay are enjoying their ride no end, although I might say that both of them are expert riders, and in terms of outright potential, they both deserve something better.
With 215 laps down, here's the man making the move on the Honda 750 from Team Honda Australia, Rod Cox, co-rider Malcolm Campbell having one stint on the bike. Cox out for his second. He's in hot pursuit of the third place. At the moment, lying fourth. Only 8 seconds behind bike number 8, Len Willing, and 2 seconds ahead of the 5th place bike of Graham Crosby. And here are the retirements so far. Clark and Taylor losing their bike on the first lap. The Byers Pace Honda going down on lap 80 with the problems of the engine. Brown and Ferris dropping their bike down about lap 93. The Suzuki 1000 of Blanco and Newman had engine failure. Then Perot and Williams had more problems with their engines and finally went out at about 2:05 with Sale and Paviel only a few laps ago crashing. But Rod Cox now putting a break between himself and the 5th place Graham Crosby in hot pursuit of 3rd place Len Willing.
The top 5 machines, led here by bike 11, Rob Phillis, are on the same lap. In 6th position is Richard Scott, right there, bike 7. He's 3 laps down on Phillis, but what a fantastic charge he's had through the field. Remember, it was he who fell at Winfield Corner right here early in the event, dropped to last position in the motorcycle race, then on his second pit stop was showered with petrol in the pits when the fueling system went awry, and in fact had to get off the machine and lose almost a minute in the pits as he cleaned himself up before he could go riding again. Now he's locked himself to the tail of Rob Phillis, both bikes lapping in 57s, 57.5s, which is about the race pace. But Scott with the impossible task in front of him to catch back 3 laps on the bikes that are in front of him, 4 Hondas and 1 Suzuki.
Into the pits, bike number 7. And on the bike at the moment is Richard Scott.
And Richard Scott in with the bike that's crawled its way back to 6th position outright. The rear wheel change, they've done a best in practices of 30 seconds. They have to undo the disc brake caliper, which they're actually loosening the axles out now. Caliper off, rear wheel off the hub because it's a drive shaft bike. Step out of the way of that. On with the new wheel. Now to find the axle, which the caliper back into positions on the disc now. A spacer, the axle, the keeper that kept the spacers in is back in. The nut's done up on the other side of the axle. The caliper's going back on. 37 seconds. 40 seconds. Their best in practices was 30. Stephen Gall up onto the bike. Delighted with the way that Richard Scott has ridden it. The exhaust's hot, the disc brake's hot, the caliper's done up now with rattle guns. And they even have to do the number back onto the bike, and it's down, and it's 59.6 seconds, so it's a pretty long stop. And the crew are cursing. And of course they've fallen off the leaderboard from 6th position. The riding has been tremendous, other than that little error from Richard Scott. But back out on the circuit now, and circulating at very quick times, just as fast as the leaders.
And that exemplifies what we were all talking about earlier. Under race conditions, the difficulties in that pit lane can make or break the teams on race day. Already we've seen this particular team have enormous difficulties, but they're still out there making their charge, and with Richard Scott and Stephen Gall on the machine, we can be sure that things are far from over yet, with only 227 laps down.
And in third place in the Castrol 6 Hour, some 25 seconds behind the leader, Rob Phillips, is bike 8 into the pits. Vince Sharp onto the machine, Len Willing off. This is the third scheduled pit stop for the Team Matic team. And the second tyre they're taking, Will Hagen's in the pits.
The axle is done up and the bike fired in 23 seconds and it's out again. Vince Sharp on the bike now. Len Willing off the bike. And a pretty smart pit stop which included a rear wheel change. And there's rattle gun air hoses and the stand for the tyre change being dragged all over the place, but order gradually being restored as bike 18 also comes into the pits. But let's have a talk with Len Willing. Len Willing, what's the track conditions like at the moment? Is there much sort of rubber building up on the line?
Oh, very much so. Well, everywhere. There's big black mark.
We'll give you time to get your helmet off and cool down a bit. Yes, what's the track conditions like?
Oh, it's good. There's not much oil, but there's quite a lot of rubber laying around. There is one patch of oil up in the loop that the flag marshals haven't spotted. It's right on the inside. It's a little bit offline, but it gets in the way when you're trying to get past people.
Is there much of a problem lapping slower riders?
Well, to be honest, Will, there's not many slow ones out there. They're all going. But it is a problem, yeah. I suppose you just got to push through where you can. But to be honest, the pace is pretty hot among everybody.
Well, how do you see the race at this stage? Because it's still pretty open, isn't it?
Oh, very open with all the shuffling going on in the pits. I really don't know where we're running or what's going on.
The leaderboard said you were third when you came in then.
Oh, yeah, right.
With only bike 11 and bike 6, the Suzuki of Roger Hayes in front of you, now dropped to fifth.
I just passed Roger, but then he passed me back and then I pitted, so he's still going in.
We noticed earlier it's pretty hard for the 750 Hondas to get past the 1000 Suzuki because of their great acceleration.
Very hard, yeah. They've certainly got heaps of horsepower. But the Honda's good when it comes to the corners and that sort of thing, so it all sort of evens out in a lap, really.
And there we see the race leader, Robbie Phillips, coming into the pit. Jeff French, the co-rider, to jump on the bike. Phillips at the moment holding a narrow 16-second lead over the second place, Roger Hayes. As French jumps on the bike, let's hand down to Will Hagen again.
Stationary and the wheel is out, the chain off, being held to the left by one crewman looking up that alone. The chain's on the sprocket now. Now it's positioned, the brake, clamp it down onto the disc, the caliper. That's done. Now to get the axle in, coming in from the left side. Stark, don't use force, get a big hammer. Belt it in and it's coming through nicely. Rattle gun onto it. Fueling finished at the front of the bike. Nuts done up and down, and it started and away, and it took 37.25 seconds, and it's Jeff French on the bike. The bike immediately behind them when they pitted was bike number 6, Roger Hayes, Robert Holden, but they're out on the track again.
With French on the bike now, the first of the Matic teams have pitted. When will bike number 8 come in? They're currently running. Bike number 8 has been in, we've just been told, so they're running number 5th at the moment. And the news is that bike number 6, Roger Hayes, is coming into the pits very shortly. Hayes, who has fought his way up into second place, would have been in the race lead with that pit stop by Robbie Phillips. So Roger Hayes and bike number 6 heading towards a pit stop which could drop him back down in the field.
Bike 32 now comes to the pits again, still smoking badly. That's Graham Geddes on the machine at the moment. Paul Feeney to mount it. Brave comeback from Geddes after 18 months out of the sport, and he's right in the groove now and enjoying himself no end. And here comes bike 6 we see in the background, so we'll leave Geddes and go with 6. This is Roger Hayes, who'd momentarily taken over the lead in the Castrol 6 Hours. The Matic team took their pit stops. And the bike screams to a halt. Hayes off the bike and Will Hagen's in the pits.
Fury in the pits on this Suzuki because an enormous amount of work has to be done, and they really haven't got it right over the brilliant times they were doing in practicing. Now they're locating the axle, and it's coming through, knocks out the dummy. Now go for the top shock absorber mounts, and it's 22 seconds as we nearly moan down in the pits. Locate the top right-hand shock absorber mount. It's 30 seconds, and it's 32, and wheel spin, and nearly catching the engine, nearly stalling it, but not quite. Robert Holden's away in second, in fact in the lead when they came into the pits, and Bike 2 into the lead. Looking pretty hot and sweaty. Hard work out there.
Yeah, very hot.
You had some real moments when you first got onto that bike after the pit stop. We were worried that the change mightn't have been properly done and something might have been wrong with the rear of the bike.
The second stint, my second. Yeah. No, everything was right. It just takes a while to get the tyre heated up, and main problem I was having because I was lapping very fast, and until the last, say, 10 laps when the tyre went off again.
Do you buff the tyre at all before you put it in the bike?
No, it was brand new, so it takes probably 2-3 laps before you get enough confidence to have a go.
And Roger, the race is still very open. Can you see a winner out there at the moment?
I could go either way, actually. There's about 3 of us that I'll probably end up the winner.
Who do you see?
Well, there's a little bit of disagreement. We think we're in front of number 11, actually. The one that we're giving the pit boards. So, I don't know.
What about Crosby coming from behind late in the race when he's got a nice new qualifying tyre on the bike?
I don't know. Well, I just did the same to him. I put 3/4 a lap on him then, so I don't know how we've dropped back so far, actually. Must be because the others haven't done the fuel stop yet. I think we're either second or first at the moment.
And as Robert Holden continues on the Roger Hayes bike, the question now remains as to whether they can get through the race without a final tyre change. They'd gone to a harder compound tyre, a Dunlop tyre, on their last change, and it now depends on their investigation of the tyre they've just taken off the machine as to whether they can get through to the end of the race on this tyre they now have on. If they can pick up some 20 seconds or so in a pit stop, and that could be all important in such a close-fought race.
Right behind Robert Holden is bike number 2. That's the race leader with Rod Cox on board. And joining us in the commentary position, the man who won the Castrol 6 Hour last year for the second time and who's had a very disappointing return to Australia from England, where he's been performing remarkably well, Wayne Gardner.
Hi, Bob.
Welcome, Wayne, to our commentary position. It's been a disappointing race for you and your team, I know, but looking at the position now with 238 laps gone in the race, how do you see the chances of the leading teams?
Really, I don't really like to say what's going to happen. Anything can happen to any rider, really. 6 hours is a long time. Really, I'd say Bike 2 could win. Really the first 3 or 4 riders could win. So really it's down to tyres and Graham. I see Graham on the screen here now. He's going really well.
What's the chance of Crosby coming from behind?
Well, like I said, anything can happen. 6 hours, and really it's up to him. And also Mick Cole. They've done well so far, and they've done quick stops here, and I think they should do real well.
And the significant thing is that on the 3rd pit stop for the Crosby team, they've changed their rear tyre. They were hopeful they were going to get through the entire race on that hard compound Dunlop. But you saw in the last stint that Crosby was falling right back off Rod Cox in racing conditions, and he just couldn't keep up with him. Cox had just gone to a new Pirelli, so Crosby obviously was in trouble with his rear tyre.
Well, this could that work in favour of them, Wayne, having that change perhaps a little bit earlier than they anticipated? Will that give them a chance to make their break at them a little bit earlier?
Yeah, they should be able to go faster now, and hopefully their tyre will make the rest of the race. That's what I think they're planning on doing. Really, it's up to the two riders. Really, you know, they should be able to go fast enough for the whole race, but it's whether they can keep the whole pace up.
Well, there you see Mick Cole still settling into the saddle, and Cox and Holden going through the inside of him.
And indeed as well, Roger Hayes just rounds him up to relegate Mick Cole to 5th position on the road.
Well, we'll come back to Wayne Gardner shortly, because down in the pits we've got Graham Crosby. He's speaking with Will Hagan.
A roar of applause went up in the pits when that tyre change, refuel and rider change was done on bike 31. It went back out in 4th place. It did the lot in 18.1 seconds. Graham Crosby, that's worth a lot of hard work on the track if you can pick up that time in the pits.
Yeah, I was going to say the best time we actually done before was about 20, so we're going quite well, aren't we?
Yes, well, it's now up to the riders, isn't it? And there's still a lot of people who can win this race.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing at the moment, we tried to use one tyre instead of taking the chance of buggering something up in a pit stop. But it looks as if at the moment the tyres just, I just can't put in the sort of times needed to enable that to work.
And what sort of tyre have you got onto it? Is it a race distance tyre or a bit softer and stickier?
Oh, it's a round one, black, I think, made of rubber.
Really? Yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a bloody clue.
And how have you been enjoying yourself?
Oh, it's actually been really good. I've had a great time whistling around there with all the boys. It brings back some fond memories, that's for sure.
Some have been seeing off, though, the great Graham Crosby, who was second in last year's World Championships. Does this deflate the ego?
No, it wouldn't be hard. I'm an old pensioner. No, I don't mind at all. It's good to see the young guys out there and really going for it. It really is good to see.
You were complaining earlier in the week of the lack of safety at Amaroo Park. Do you still think that now that you're in the race and the adrenaline's pumping?
I tell you what, when you start coming onto this front straight and you've got a tyre that's not as best as it should be, I start thinking about those.
What sort of speeds are you doing at that stage? Do you have a look?
Well, I frightened the hell out of myself just before, actually. I looked at the speedo and we're showing about 175 k's just before breaking into the stop corner.
What are you getting up the hill?
Scared.
And at what speed do you get scared?
No, actually, going up the hill, I think we reached just pretty close to 200 k's, and that's going. And we're showing about 11.5 on the tacho. So, let's hope the thing holds together at a place like that.
And will you be on for a final sprint at the end?
I guess so. I think so. They're gonna put Mick out and see if we can get some of those laps back. And I guess when they change the tyre and stick me out there, I suppose I've got to pull the pin or pull the finger or whatever you're supposed to do.
Been renowned for pulling the pin, and a man who's virtually modelled himself on him in terms of technique and style on the track, Wayne Gardner. He's an amazing rider and a wonderful character, isn't he?
Yeah, he's unbelievable. I've known him for many years and he's always been the same. He's never changed, and success has never really got to him and made him a big head ring like that. He's always been the same, so if he has to go fast, he will. And like he said, if he has to pull the pin, he'll go for it.
It could be a very interesting finish for this bike number 31. And while we watch it circulating here with 244 laps down, Wayne, can you give us some indication of what the future might hold for you?
Let me see. I've got to go back to England tomorrow. Honda and Britain don't know as yet of my accident through the week, so it's a bit of a disappointment when I tell them what's happened. And unfortunately, I broke my little finger on my left hand, which I've just been getting over 2 broken fingers on my right. So they're not going to be too happy, but I think I've got a race at Brands next weekend, and so I haven't told them as yet what's really going on my hand, but I think it's going to be okay. Once I get past that, which is the end of all the major championships through the year, I'm off about 2 or 3 weeks later off to Macau, or Hong Kong, Macau, with the Macau Grand Prix, and from there to Malaysia, and then from there back home. So I'm a bit busy yet.
Any chance for Grand Prix bike? I know that you were looking very hopefully towards one.
Yes, it's really when I started racing, I've always wanted to do Grand Prix and base my whole series and my whole racing around Grand Prix. I've had to do like Superbikes and Formula 1s and everything to work my way up that way. But it's shaping up pretty well for next year. At the moment, Honda have told me that they can give me the bikes, the van, mechanics, the whole lot, the tyres, and all I've got to come up with is a sponsor, really. And Honda are actually looking at a deal where they want a sponsor to put in the money just to run the team, really, which is a very cheap deal, really. They're looking at actually £50,000, so hopefully, I've got a few people looking for that sort of money, and if that comes off, then I'll be going Grand Prix racing, and you never know, maybe world champion.
Wayne Gardner up in lights. He certainly has the ability. Thanks very much for joining us, Wayne.
Thank you.
We'll go back to the race with 246 laps down, John Smales.
Indeed, Bob, and at the moment it's bike 2 in the lead, the Rod Cox machine, which is 36 seconds in front of the first of the team managed bikes, bike 11, Rob Phillis and Jeff French. Mind you, remember that bike 2 has not yet had its third stop, and both managed bikes have. The managed bikes are circulating nose to tail. There's 1 second in between them as we look now at the Castrol scoreboard. Then 1 lap down is the Roger Hayes Suzuki bike 6, 3 seconds only ahead of Graham Crosby and Michael Cole. Michael Cole at the moment riding bike 31. And there's the leader, 2. And he's got at least another half hour to go yet before his third scheduled pit stop, and that could be just the deciding factor in the Castrol 6 Hour for 1983. And now the race between the two managed bikes, bike 8 and bike 11, side by side as they come down to stop corner. Vince Sharp on 11. But it's 8. No, sorry, Vince Sharp on 8. And on 11 is Jeff French. And Frank Maddich and his young son Chris in the pits are going to be watching this dice with great interest, because while a dice is a good thing to keep a rider awake in the boring middle sections of a race, it also puts both machines in terrible jeopardy if someone puts a foot wrong. And I think there won't be too long before the pit boards might come out and tell them just to cool a little bit. And more great sporting action coming up on ABC Sport on Thursday the 3rd and Friday the 4th of November, the Australian PGA Championship 1983, live at 1 p.m. Saturday the 5th and Sunday the 6th of November. Be with ABC Sport, where we bring you the best sport in Australia.
And Robert Holden now in the saddle on bike number 6, the Suzuki Katana, that started in 10th grid position, worked its way forward, is now being pursued by the Rod Cox Malcolm Campbell Honda 750. The race leader, the Suzuki, in 4th place. Out of Honda corner again, this comparison between the Suzuki, 1/3 bigger again in the engine than the Honda, and a little bit of extra power, about another 15 horsepower. But the Honda with greater ground clearance, just a touch quicker through the corners.
In 6th position, 3 laps down, is the Ron Bolden Gary Coleman machine. Coleman at the helm. He's already been into the pits once and stormed straight out again. The pits were not ready for him, so he had to go around one more time. Now the agonizing rear wheel change for the Yamaha 900s, the shaft drive machines. And Bolden's got all the time in the world to find out about track conditions from Gary Coleman, because this wheel change will not be quick, at least not by comparison with the Hondas. To say that the stop is unhurried, lacking in fuss, is an understatement, as they rock the machine backwards and forwards trying to line up the axle shaft. There goes the shaft in now, and look at the man's hand against the exhaust pipe. That's how hot it is. 45 seconds so far gone. Air jacks looking for a way in. Finally the number plate goes back on, as still they do our bolts on the left-hand side of the vehicle. The longest pit stop of the race to date, or scheduled pit stop, 65 seconds. And he's away in 67 seconds. Ron Bolden, 4 times Australian Grand Prix champion, back in the Castrol 6R. And in the pits, Bob Vincent.
Gary Coleman, just at the moment taking off his gloves and his helmet. Very hot, humid afternoon as Gary undresses after his second stint on the bike. Gary, how are things out there at the moment as far as the circuit's concerned?
I'll just take this helmet off for a sec. The circuit's quite slippery. I don't know. We haven't done a tyre change. As you see, we just did one then. But even since this morning, the track seems to be slippery. And I must admit, I'm doing a... What's the chap at Bathurst that couldn't do a race comeback or something? I haven't had a race for so long. I'm just not race fit, you know. The times aren't that quick, I don't think. You know, you get someone quick passes you and you can sort of hang with them for a couple of laps. So I don't think the times are that quick. It's just that I'm getting a bit old or something, I think.
It's a very humid day, though. That must be telling on all the riders.
I think so. Everyone seems to be this year complaining of muscle cramps more so than anywhere else. I mean, even Stephen Gall, he's built like a sort of...
proverbial brick.
Yeah. He's even a bit sore in the arm. So, you know, if Stephen's sore, everyone else must be sore.
Well, with 260 laps down and a little probably over 100 laps to go, where do the best chances lie, do you think?
Well, we've got to hope for people to have unfortunate things happen to them. We're running, I think, about 6th or 7th at the moment. There's no chance of picking up on the track, so we just got to hope that... I mean, I don't like to wish it on other competitors. I hope their bikes fail them, put it that way.
Coming up now to the point where Bike 2, the race leader, Rod Cox and Mal Campbell, will have to make their third scheduled pit stop. And they've got to the situation where they're only going to need this stop and no more for the race distance, because they've gone 1.5 hours per stop, where the other Hondas have been forced to stop as early as 1 hour 15. And it's going to make all the difference as this race enters its concluding stages, because there's at least a minute involved in getting into the pits and getting out again, and that's a minute, one full lap of the Amaru Park circuit that they can make up. Cox's hand goes up now, indicating this is the lap. They've got to the 1.5 hour mark. 278 laps of the Castrol 6 hour completed. It's Graham Crosby. Mick Cole actually at the helm, passes him on the road to relap himself and get back on the same lap as the leader. 35 seconds is the gap from Cox back to Bike 8, Len Willing and Vince Sharp. Bob Vincent is in the pits.
Rod Cox is off the bike, and on the bike goes Malcolm Campbell. The back tyre is off. Team Honda crew viciously slipping it into the sockets. The rear wheel is on. The tank is full. Malcolm Campbell is out in something like 23 seconds for that pit stop, and he's out for the last hour and a half of the race.
And Mal Campbell looks anxiously behind him to see where the opposition might be. We think they slipped through during the pit stop, and that's what we're looking for at the moment, to give you a gap from first back to third position, Malcolm Campbell, because both team managed bikes are virtually nose to tail on the road. And yes, they are in front. Bike 8 is in the lead. That's Vince Sharp from Bike 11, Jeff French. And they are, in fact, now only 12 seconds in front of Malcolm Campbell in third position.
Rod, you're having some sustenance there, mate. What's that, chewing gum?
Just a bit of ice, mate.
A bit of ice.
Still down the inside.
It's very hot out there, I know, but you must be happy now. You're back within the race lead in sight, and no one else, no more changes on the bike.
No more stops, hopefully. We should handle it now. How long to go?
We've got about an hour and a half to go in the race.
Should make it right through now with Wally on it. We should win it, I think. Nothing goes wrong.
No problems at all, you don't think, with the bike? It's all handling well?
Good. Just perfect. Brand new. It'll be brand new now. It's got the tyre on it. It'll be good.
What will be the instructions for Malcolm as he goes out in that last leg? Because things are pretty crucial. There can be no mistakes.
Oh, you can handle it. He'll do whatever he has to. Sure. I've got no worries about him.
So you're staring a Castrol 6 hour win in the face?
Sure hope so. Be the first one.
Race leader is the Len Willing Vince Sharp bike number 8. for the Matic Racing team. Behind it, Phyllis and French from the same team, bike number 11. Then Cox Campbell on bike number 2 in 3rd place. 4th place, the lone Suzuki of Holden and Hayes, well placed, mucking up the the Honda order, with Crosby Cole on the 4th Yamaha in the top 5, number 31, and then Scott and Gall again clawing their way back on their Yamaha to be the leader of the 3 Yamaha 900s, 6th place outright, bike number 7. And after 280 laps, that indicates 372 at race end, 5 laps up on last year's record race distance. Still a very warm, sunny day at Amaroo Park on the 1.95 kilometre circuit. Very hilly, very difficult, as you can see there, making the bike suspension work around the fast back section of the circuit as they come back down the hill. It's quite a climb up the hill, and it's quite a drop down, although it's spread over a greater distance, so it's not steep at any particular point. But heavy braking for Honda corner, and bike 8 fairly unsteady there, as Vince Sharp works it very hard. He's getting it unsettled in most corners at this stage.
Bike 11 in 2nd place, some 4 seconds behind the leader, is Jeff French, soon to hand over to Rob Phillis for the last time, and Phillis is going to have to give every ounce of his skill to get this bike back into the lead, because only 4.5 seconds behind bike 11 is bike 2, Malcolm Campbell, who's already had his last pit stop. In the pits at the moment is Bob Vincent.
Well, a man who's very interested in the performance of Robbie Phillis and his chances of reining in the leaders is John Harvey. John, you've mentioned occasionally that Robbie potentially could be a good car driver.
Well, I think that's true. I think Robbie's certainly got the talent. He showed that as a motorcycle racer. He's very cool under pressure, very smooth and very, very consistent. And I think, like Greg Hansford and a couple of other people, Robbie would certainly have the talent to be a good car racer.
Do you think it's a little bit early yet in his career?
Well, I think so. I think Robbie really hasn't reached the peak of his motorcycle racing career, and I'd really like to see Robbie go and try motorcycle racing in Europe next year. I think he's got a couple of years left in him at the top, and I'd like to see him do it in Europe.
Well, you'd be a pretty keen judge. You've done everything from Speedway to winning the James Hardy, so that must be a fair vote of confidence in Robbie.
Yeah, well, I've been a very good friend of Robbie and Mick Hone of Mick Hone Motorcycles, who has been his sponsor for some time now, but I think Mick Hone would probably not want to sponsor Robbie next year. He'd like to stop sponsoring him and force him to go overseas. And I think that's the plan. I think we might see Robbie off there next year.
He's perhaps a little bit complacent, do you think? He doesn't realise his own potential.
I think that's true, and I think that's why probably Mick Hone would like to force the issue and say, right, Robbie, we're not going to sponsor you this year. Get off overseas and do it.
Are you looking towards a team managed victory here this afternoon?
Well, I think they can still do it. They're down a little bit at the moment, but just today's event just proves how important pit work is. I mean, Rob Phillis, Jeff French bike has lost some time in the pits, and that's unfortunate. They've certainly been doing it on the circuit, and I think there's probably a chance they can still do it, but it's going to be hard work for them.
Well, if there's anyone quick enough and keen enough, it'll be Robbie Phillis.
I would say so, yeah. They're a good combination. They've done a good job today, as the guys on the Hondas, and I'd like to see Frank Matic get up, but certainly looks like it's going to be a Honda benefit this weekend.
John Harvey, of course, the winner of the James Hardy 1000 only 3 weeks ago, driving with Peter Brock and Larry Perkins in the Holden dealer team Commodore, and a man who takes a great interest in motorcycle racing. In fact, he'll be racing at Mount Panorama next Easter time in an historic event, riding a Velocette, which he's currently restoring himself. And here comes Vince Sharp, heading for his last pit stop. He at the moment is only 13 seconds ahead of Malcolm Campbell in 3rd position, who's had his final pit stop and therefore can keep going for the next hour 10 that remains in the Castrol 6 hour. Sharp to be off the bike and Len Willing to be on it. Willing, the winner of the Australian 500cc Grand Prix last year. And the bike already at this stage has dropped to third position in the motorcycle race as both bike 11, Jeff French, and bike 2, Malcolm Campbell, storm through. 15 seconds gone. 19 seconds for the managed team with a wheel change. Now that is pulling it out of the hat. And now it's entirely up to Len Willing with 70 minutes of racing left to go to see what he can do with his skill and indeed with his daring in the Castrol 6 hour for 1983. There's Rob Phillips now togging up. He pumping his adrenaline up as well. His wife Carol there behind him. And Rob Phillips, probably the fastest man, with maybe even including Graham Crosby in this event, capable of pulling back tenths of a second a lap on Malcolm Campbell. The two of them very, very good. Campbell more experienced in production bike racing. But don't write the Castrol 6 hour off at this early stage. And here's Crosby now, lying in 5th position, having pulled back some 4 seconds in the last 10 laps on Roger Hayes. That's Michael Cole off the bike, and Graham Crosby onto the machine for the final sprint to the finish.
The incredible thing about that down here, John Smales and Will, is that they've changed the tyre yet again. Graham Crosby has another new tyre on the bike, and we could be in for some fireworks as Crosby gets back out on the circuit. The Maddich team preparing now for their second bike to come in. Robbie Phillips on with the leathers. He's waiting for French to come in, and this is mounting up to one hell of a bike race.
Bike 11 now in
2 seconds in arrears to bike number 2, was overtaken actually. The lead changed twice in about 30 seconds because as bike 8 pitted, Vince Sharp handing over to Len Willing, his other team bike, number 11, went into the lead, and then halfway round that lap, it was overtaken by the Rod Cox Malcolm Campbell bike number 2. So this bike now a couple of seconds in arrears. In second place, there's the race leader too. Jeff French, a couple of seconds behind him and about to make a pit stop. And then everybody with new tyres and their gun riders in the saddle out for the final 1.5 hour scrap to the finish. In fact, it's about just over 1 hour. And it should be quite a race within a race. And into the pits it comes. In second place at the moment, about to be re-overtaken, firstly by the Suzuki 1000 of Robert Holden, Roger Hayes. That's in third at the moment, will be second very shortly. Then it will be overtaken by its own team bike, Vince Sharp, Len Willing. And now these quite remarkable pit stops that the bike teams have developed, because they are not easy. It's nowhere near as easy to change a wheel on a bike as it is on a car. There's chains and there's brakes and brake calipers that have to be moved, lots of nuts and bolts, spacers on axles, and Bob Vincent's down there.
Problems yet, no problems with the stalling, but yes, problems again with the stalling. That's the third time in the race for this bike. And they could be seeing their chances of victory on bike 11 anyway for the Maddich Racing team, slipping by the boards. The seconds tick by. Still no start, still a problem with the bike. It's ticking over slowly. He's in gear. Robbie Phillips is out of the pits. But what a disappointment for this team. A bike that's been competitive all day, except in the pits. Roger Hayes now quickly into the pits and outs. We're seeing some tremendous pit work down here at the moment. This race has certainly brought the best out of all the teams in the race as far as tyre changes, preparations of the bike, fuel stops and rider changes. We haven't seen anything better in any of the Castrols of the past. It's made it a very exciting race. It's now up to the riders, the bikes and the tyres out on the Amaroo circuit to decide the winner over the last hour of the race.
Well, after 44 heartbreaking seconds, bike 11 out again. He's in second. Well, he was in second place when he came in. He would be back to fourth now. So that Rod Cox, Malcolm Campbell lead on bike 2 from bike 6 that came into the pits. So as we get an update, it's bike 8 second. And that's the Len Willing riding bike 8, replacing Vince Sharp. Bike 6 just been moved on the leaderboard, and bike 11 comes into third place, we're told. Rob Phillips, which means Crosby is back in fifth place on 31. A new wheel fitted after when Crosby took over from Mick Cole. It's come, in fact, it is now fourth. Fifth place, the Suzuki 1000 of Robert Holden, Roger Hayes. And sixth still, and unable to pull up the 3 laps that it's down, is the Yamaha 900 of Richard Scott Stephen Gall. And there's that bike in the pits for its final stop. Richard Scott back into the saddle. The man who did everything right for the bike, bar that one error when he just managed to tangle with another bike, and it just took the wheel from under him and skittled him this morning, and that was the start of their tale of woe. But other than that, it qualified superbly. It has run as fast as almost any bike on the track during the day, and is a credit to the team and to the riders, and to that matter for the machinery, because it's very much a touring type bike, and yet it can sprint obviously with the Sportsters.
Well, we just had a slight pit altercation here. One of the team Maddich guys ran into their fuel tank as it was being raised off the ground. Nothing serious. With me, more importantly at the moment, Jeff French, who has just finished a stint on the bike that Robbie Phillips is racing on at the moment. Jeff, I think it's fair to say that you would always have been very much in the lead, or very much up with the leaders, if it hadn't been for that minor problem with the bike.
Yeah, it seems that we lost so many valuable seconds because the bike wouldn't restart after refueling. You know, it just seemed to go on forever. So yeah, you're quite right. We probably would have been a lot further in front if we hadn't had the problem.
What was the problem? Is it a blockage or what?
I don't know. I spoke to the mechanic, but he hasn't had a chance to think about it because everybody's been pretty busy. But who knows? Could be the float bowls. I don't know.
We don't see a lot of you down here. You do a lot of your racing up north. Very exciting rider. Any chance of seeing you more on the circuits down here?
Yeah, I just like to do the big ones. So whenever the big ones come up, I usually go to them, providing they're not too far away. I only go about 500 miles. That's about my limit.
And with this much of the race down, we've had about 200 or 308 laps. Probably another 60, maybe 70 laps to go. What's the chances of Robbie reeling it in?
Well, gee whiz, he's rode terrific, although, at the first, if he can ride as well as he did at the first hour, anything can happen. So we just keep our fingers crossed and hope that he brings it home.
there are some people who unkindly suggested that Rob Phillips is not the world's best production bike racer. Well, at the moment he's proving a lot of people wrong, because the Phillips charge has started. He's 1 lap and about 3 seconds down on Malcolm Campbell on the lead Honda VF 750, the official Team Honda entry, and Phillips needs to unlap himself and then get a full lap back to get himself into race contention. He's currently lying in 3rd position, 64 seconds behind the race leader, if you like to look at it that way. And Phillips is using all the track, ripple strips and all, as he now makes this Team Matich Honda work itself as hard as it's worked all day. The flash of bike 2 in front there, the Dayglow green, is Malcolm Campbell. And Rob Phillips is using all the track and a little bit more in his pursuit of Campbell, cracking open the throttle there, you can see. And this is the danger period for the Hondas. There have been a lot of people again who've been saying that the Hondas aren't bulletproof. In fact, 2 have blown up today of the minor machines, probably not as well prepared. As you can see, bike 2 in the lead, Malcolm Campbell, and bike 11, Rob Phillips, with 2 lap riders to be passed in between. The Ducati 600 passed quickly. Phillips deals with both riders over the top. There's Campbell now. He's a secure 24 seconds in front of bike 8 in 2nd position. Bike 8 at the moment being ridden by Len Willing. And while it seems most unlikely that Rob Phillips could pick up a full lap on a production bike specialist by Malcolm Campbell, Phillips is certainly showing his mettle now as he reels him in by up to 3/4 of a second a lap. To extrapolate 3/4 of a second a lap out over 45 minutes remaining, it's obviously impossible for Rob Phillips to pick up Mal Campbell unless Campbell has a problem. Now the gap really closes as Phillips moves in on Campbell, and Campbell's a man who loves a hard scrap, and he loves racing with nobody better than Rob Phillips. And will he let him through, or will he take the challenge and try and hold him out? Braking duel. Still Campbell. Up to Winfield corner. And as Peter Radford on the Suzuki 1000 looked behind him, he must have died 1,000 deaths as he saw Malcolm Campbell and Rob Phillips in the whites of both their eyes charging down upon him. Now it's Max Thompson on the VF 750 to be dealt with. And again, wonderful riding from the slower backmarkers, and in this race nobody's going particularly slow. But all of them well aware of the traffic behind them. Gary Wan and Gary Turner. And is it Phillips? No, it's not.
And here's Crosby sweeping under Phyllis in a tight entry to the right-hander. And far too tight an entry, standing up on the pegs, then he gets his weight over onto the inside, but he asks too much of the back wheel. Phyllis tightening to go under Crosby as Crosby sweeps out and down, and he knows he's gone, and he tries to correct, and he is not in the event. And then he has a very gentle run, actually, sitting up, just getting a bit hot in the right buttock. The bike overtakes him and takes all the forces of stopping on the front wheel and the front fork. And even before the bike had hit the fence, Crosby was up chasing it. And that brings up into fourth place bike number 6, the Suzuki 1000 of Robert Holden, Roger Hayes. Fifth then will be number 18, Bernie Summers, Robert Scollier, as Crosby heads to the pits. No doubt a bit ashamed.
And a true professional, he stays off the track to do it, staying out of the way of the traffic.
With a bit of luck they can be a finisher, but right out of the contest. And this is the man that's kept things very well in shape today, Malcolm Campbell. He was one of 3 qualifiers last year who did 55.8. He wasn't the first to do it, so he didn't start from pole. The previous year he had an identical time with another rider, but it was the first to do it and was on pole. But for 3 years now, Malcolm Campbell has had the fastest qualifying time for the Castrol 6R. And only a few days ago, when Dennis Neal, who manages Graham Crosby's team, suggested that Crosby run the same tyre as Campbell was running, which was a quicker tyre, he was doing better times on it, but Crosby said the bike slid too much. Crosby said, well, I don't want to spend my life 6 hours of the bike sliding around the way Malcolm Campbell does. Well, it's Crosby that's come unstuck and Campbell that hasn't.
Applause from the pits now as Crosby comes in. Brave effort from the International, good one.
And the forks are bent. The front wheel is not vertical with the rear wheel. And it's in a sad state. Very bad luck.
Well, there's not much you can say, really. It was building up as the dice of the final stages of the race with Robbie Phillips, and unfortunately Crosby was the loser of the dice. But the bike is very bent. They're having a look at it at the moment. Some decision will be made. Mike Cole is dressed and ready to go. Graham Crosby has his usual smile on his face. No doubt that's a smile of happiness and relief that he's not too hurt, but I'm sure that he's very disappointed to have lost it at this late stage in the race. Dennis Neal is having a word with him at the moment. They're tossing up the idea of whether or not to go on with the race. Mick Cole has in fact taken off his helmet. I'll just get a quick word with Dennis if I can get it. Any decision, Dennis, on what's going to happen? You finish for the race?
Having a look at the thing coming up along pit alley there, it's really crabbing badly, so I think it's hardly a matter of putting a set of levers or something on it. It's pretty well retired, I'd say. Graham said he's having a good dice with Robbie, and he just tilted a little bit hard going into the loop and lost the front end.
Obviously a great disappointment for you.
Well, it shows you just how close to the limit these two guys are riding around. They were Lenny Willing was the next in place, and I did a split, and in 4 laps they made something like 8 seconds on him. So they're catching almost 2 seconds a lap. Would have been really interesting if it sort of gone another 20 minutes.
I'll see if I can get Graham over here. Graham, can you come and have a word with us?
Graham?
Graham's coming around at the moment. Well, Cros, you were going like a train, mate, but something went wrong.
Well, you know, with electronics and Apple computers and all that, they go pretty good, but you can't rely on the human element. Unfortunately, it's a bit... I think I might have been just going... I was going hard. I sort of caught Robbie, and looking at my lap times, I was about a quarter of a second slower behind him. So I thought if I could pass him, then I might be able to just put that...
bit of a gap.
Yeah, bit of a gap, but... 2 things. First of all, you've got to catch him. Secondly, you've got to pass him. And thirdly, you've got to stay in front of him. I got 2 of them right, but I couldn't get the last one.
He's a great rider, isn't he?
Yeah, he was riding superbly. There was no problems at all. It's just the lap time sort of really got down to a point where I had to try something to get past him. And I sort of, I run around the outside of him over the top of the loop. There's a couple of slower riders in front. Now, I figured that if I could get to those slower riders and through them before Robbie could, well, that'd be great. I can put them between us and I'd be able to carry on. But I went over the top, went around the outside. I tried to get around the outside of him, so then when we started to come back into the loop, well, I was already there. I was there. I just carried on straight on me bum.
Looking at the race in retrospect, do you feel that perhaps the attempt to go out on one tyre was the wrong move from the start?
In hindsight, possibly, but you can never tell. I feel fairly confident that we could have done high 56s on the tyre that we've got at the moment, and possibly only gone through with three changes, which is good, But you've really the element of trying to get out there and stay out there and avoiding pit stops and wheel changes, because it really tries to be trying to avoid that. Somebody drops a spacer and there's a bit of time consumed on that. So the less wheel changes, the better. But
well, what's it take to win a 6 hour? You've had a few goes at them. You've come back after a little bit of time overseas. What do you think of the race?
I think the race is something that you can't take lightly. You have to have a really good backup, which we've got with Apple Computer Shop. That's great. No problems at all. They're really, really terrific. The only problem is, the riders have got to put it in their brain that they've got a lap time to go to and go for it, not try and overdo it.
So the secret is consistency and a very formulated plan beforehand that you're going to stick to?
Yeah, that's not changing half midstream.
But what do you do in a situation where the tyre battle's raging, the bike battle's raging, and the riders are expected to stay super cool?
Mate, life wasn't meant to be easy.
I think somebody else said that, didn't they?
I don't know.
Well, there's the super cool Malcolm Campbell now in the lead, 35 seconds in front of bike 8 Len Willing. But the story of the race at the moment is the incredible pursuit of Rob Phillips in third position, now only 11 seconds behind his teammate Len Willing, and closing by up to a second a lap. Meantime, Malcolm Campbell, with the pressure right off him, has 22 minutes remaining and 33 seconds in hand.
Leading that trio on 18 is the Robert Scolyer-Bernie Summers pairing that's presently in 6th place.
3 laps down.
And yes, a long way in arrears, the one that Richard Scott came to grief on when he was trying to pass him for 6th place a long time ago. Sandwiched in between him and the race leader is 26 Robert Astley Dave Moore. Bike 27, which is a long way back. '15th place, in fact.
When Campbell picks up Summers, he will have put 4 laps on the machine. Hard brakes. Summers riding his own race to his own pace, which is a fair bit slower, obviously, than Malcolm Campbell, and Campbell was unsettled there in Honda corner. So now Astley comes back under his braking, and Campbell will be feeling most uncomfortable in that sandwich and very keen to get clear of it.
Team Honda Australia have really done it well in this event, from qualifying fastest to running at the front and looking well situated through most of the race, although there have been many leaders and many changes of lead. Interesting to look back at previous 6 hours, this being the 14th. Kawasaki have won 5 of them outright. Honda have won 3, certain to make it a 4th, because we've got Hondas in the first, all the major positions at this stage. Kawasaki, in addition, have taken 3 class placings, Honda only 1. Yamaha's had 1 outright win, but 10 class placings. Suzuki 2 outrights and 4 class placings, and BMW and Yamaha 1 outright each. So Honda will come up second only to Kawasaki with 4 outrights. looks like being Malcolm Campbell, but if it's not him, lurking in the wings is Vince Sharp, Len Willing. And if it's not them, if something should go wrong, Jeff French, Rob Phillis. And you go back to 4th place, the Suzuki of Roger Hayes, Robert Holden, before you find a non-Honda. 5th place then is the Yamaha 900 of Stephen Gall, as we look at bike 8 in 2nd place. 5th though, Stephen Gall, Richard Scott now, 3 laps down, and in 6th place another Honda, Robert Scollier, Bernie Summers. But this, the Pirelli team bike, one of 2.
Only 5.5 seconds, in fact, now separates Len Willing from the charging Rob Phillis in 3rd position. And undoubtedly, in the closing stages of the Castrol 6 Hour, a dice must develop between these 2 riders. Willing, as we said a long time ago, one of the hungriest riders in this race. And even 2nd place, he won't relinquish too easily to a teammate like Rob Phillis.
On the tyre front, and there are about 5 or 6 different brands here, the major ones being Pirelli and Dunlop. But there's also Metzeler, Alone Bridgestone, and the tyre front is being well and truly won by Pirelli, which holds the first 3 placings, with Dunlop on Roger Hayes' bike in 4th place. Dunlops are on the 5th place Yamaha, and Pirelli on the 6th place bike number 18.
Gymnasts in their own right. Many of these high-speed acrobats will be very keen themselves to watch the spectacular gymnastics on ABC Sport, starting this Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time throughout Australia, right through till Friday on the 21st of October. Every night, 6 o'clock, spectacular gymnastics on ABC Sport. Eighth position in the Castrol 6 Hour is Richard Schooler, who's dropping back through the field as he really punches in the one-man power to get himself to the pits. And at this late stage in the day, one must wonder whether it's absolutely worth a bloke's while to go to all that much effort to come back into the pits that way. Schooler, of course, riding with the South African Mario Rademeyer on a Yamaha 900. There's Rademeyer now helping him out. The 2 riders only allowed to push. It could be that the bike's run out of petrol. And there's the leader, Malcolm Campbell, and we saw just a flash behind him, and Mal knows he's there, is Roger Hayes on bike 6, the Suzuki 1000, coming up to unlap himself on Campbell. Hayes, of course, winner of 2 Castrol 6 Hours in 1976 and 1978, both times with Jim Budd. That's him on bike 6. Sharing the ride this year with Bob Holden, winner of the 750cc class last year. And Campbell obviously settled himself into such a groove that he doesn't mind who passes him, really, as long as it's not bike 8, which at the moment is 39 seconds behind. That's Len Willing, with only 2 seconds then separating Willing back to Rob Phillis.
This is the situation with just 15 minutes remaining in the 14th Castrol 6 Hour. You can see Honda's dominating, and the 2 riders on the lead bike, Rodney Cox and Malcolm Campbell from Sydney and Tasmania respectively, getting the whiff of victory which neither of them have ever had before in the 6 Hour. In the minor placings, Suzuki Yamaha breaking up the Honda formation, of which is 4 Hondas in the top 6, but an excellent effort from Holden and Hayes, and particularly Scott and Gall, to fight their way back from way down in the wilderness of position 23. As Hayes closes in on Campbell.
Oh, and Campbell there striking the ripple strips, and he might have hurt his foot.
He pulled his right foot back indeed. As we look now at Rob Phillis. Phillis is in third. Hayes is behind him in fourth place, and he has a bit of an anxious look over his shoulder. Phillis using the studs on his knees, which is the latest fashion overseas, because the riders get the bikes over so far, particularly Grand Prix bikes, that the knees are constantly rubbing on the track and they suffer grazes and so on. So they have these replaceable nylon sort of buffers as knee pads. Phyllis, Andrew Johnson too, that are using them locally. We're showing now Rod Cox as the race leader from 11. Phyllis in second place, the official lap chart tells us, 39 seconds in arrears and just 2 seconds in front of bike 8.
So he's passed him, in fact, only in the last couple of laps. The amazing pursuit of Rob Phillis has given him second position over teammate Len Willing, and puts him 39 seconds now behind Malcolm Campbell, the race leader.
So third place then Len Willing, fourth place Roger Hayes, 3 laps down to Stephen Gall, and then Richard Schooler, Robert Scollier. Quite impossible for Phyllis to pin back that gap of 39 seconds in only 15 laps. It's nearly 3 seconds a lap, but he won't stop trying. He wants to get the margin down as small as possible. And on the other hand, the lead bike number 2 looks to be headed to record race distance. The record set last year by Wayne Gardner, Wayne Clark, in a race that wasn't entirely dry, was 367 laps, which is an increase of nearly 18% on the original race distance. This race being set on time rather than distance. Speeds have gone up by about 18% from the winning margin in the first year of 312 laps. Brian Hindle and Len Attlee on a 650 Triumph.
5.5 seconds now separates Rob Phillis from Len Willing. That's the margin he's opened up over third place.
Robert Holden sharing the bike with Roger Hayes, that's in fourth place, was first in the 750 class last year on a 750 Katana Suzuki, which was shared with Bob Toomey, who has a broken leg, and so couldn't ride this year, was scheduled to ride with Neil Chivers. Again, the race divided into 750 and unlimited class, so Roger Hayes in fourth place will be winner of the unlimited class, presuming he continues in front of his other contestants in that class. 750 class will be won by the outright winner.
That lap, Rob Phillis takes 2 seconds off Malcolm Campbell, the race leader. The gap down to 37 seconds, but it can't be done.
And I think, John, there's a good argument for this race going back to a third class, perhaps up to 600 cc's, in which we could see water-cooled 350 Yamahas, some of the 550 four-strokes from some of the Japanese, the 600 Ducatis and so on, and build the entries back up to a maximum that we've seen in past years of 40 bikes.
Well, certainly will last year, or rather next year. We'll be seeing a number of new machines in the event, which should guarantee a maximum feel.
Yamaha has a new V4 500cc two-stroke, which is modelled on the race bike that was only just beaten for the World Championship in Grand Prix form by Kenny Roberts. Honda has a 1000 version of the VF 750.
Kawasaki has a new water-cooled 900, which should be a real goer.
And Suzuki has a nice big new bike too. So it's another Yamaha, a Yamaha 1000. So there's some exciting new models coming up, many of them released recently at one of the overseas shows, and they'll be at the Tokyo show at the end of this month.
Roger Hayes is 16 seconds behind bike 8 Len Willing.
And Hayes, sitting now in front of Malcolm Campbell, has unlapped himself on him, is pulling away from him. Campbell not willing to get involved in that argument, very sensibly. Although he has to keep charging, he must stay on the pace and keep the concentration up, but no way should he get into an argument with somebody who's got some reason for going forward. Campbell's got none at this stage.
35 seconds is now the gap between Malcolm Campbell and Rob Phillis, and Malcolm Campbell is doing it easily. The Castrol 6 Hour is the 8th race in the Revs Long Distance Race Series for 1983, currently led by Neil Shivas, who can't be with us today because he has a broken ankle. Malcolm Campbell is in 3rd position in the championship on 42 points behind Shivas 53 and Pete Byers 52. Campbell has had 2 wins so far this year, both on 750, on the Honda VF 750, the Castrol 2 Hour at Calder, and the Tasmanian 2 Hour at Symonds Plains. Also took a 2nd at Adelaide International Raceway. Failed to finish 2 other rounds and failed to enter 2.
Interesting at the moment that 1st, 2nd and 3rd place in the race are being held by the bikes that qualified in that order, which is not often the case. 4th place, though, being held by the bike that qualified 10th. Number of injured motorcyclists not able to compete today. There's been quite a lot of damage done in recent races to a number of riders. But there's also one who's been racing in the 125cc class, a great mate of Wayne Gardner's, who's been ill for many years with cystic fibrosis, wasn't expected to live past 21, and has done so by great will to do so. And that's Alan Simpson from Wollongong, and he's in hospital at the moment, not too well. And Wayne knows that he'll be watching today, and very keen that we should pass on wishes to him. And of course to the Australian riders who are overseas, people like Paul Lewis and Chris Oldfield, some of the ones that weren't able to come back to this 6 hour who've competed in past years, although a number of Australians did come back. John Pace, Wayne Gardner, Graham Geddes, who's been over there. Rob Phillis has raced overseas and this year.
Six minutes remaining in the Castrol 6 Hour for 1983. 6.5 laps for Malcolm Campbell.
Which should take him, it'll be between 3 and 4 laps past the previous highest race distance.
An amazing effort for the 750 Honda, in fact, Will.
Yes,
when you consider that last year we were looking at the CB 1100Rs and saying, well, that's the last of the dinosaurs, and that's the last time we'll see anybody go as fast around Amaru Park as we saw on the big 1100cc superbike Hondas. And now we see a production bike, some 400 cc's less, actually getting a better time.
Well, we saw a hint of it at Adelaide Raceway, where in the long distance race there, the 750 Honda was quicker in qualifying. In the previous year, the 1100R Honda in a very hot race had been a failure. The riders just couldn't stay cool behind a very big enveloping fairing, but they also beat the 1100 Suzuki time, and quite remarkable the performance they're getting out of these 750cc machines. Last year 1100R Honda, the previous year the late Neville Hiscock and Dave Peterson, GSX 1100 Suzuki. The year before that Honda again, which was Wayne Gardner and Andrew Johnson. Andrew, one who's up here today, but again injured in a work accident and not able to compete. The year before that it was Suzuki, and then it was Yamaha's sole win back in 1978 with Jim Budd and Roger Hayes. By gee, He ran wide there, did Len Willing on bike number 8, right out to the edge of the track, to the area where Wayne Gardner, when he got off the track the other day, found there was a bit of a depression and it caught the wheel of the bike and threw him over the handlebars, and Willing was within a whisker of doing that himself. He ran just a little bit too wide there as he comes up to lap 19. Gary Gleeson, Peter McKay's Ducati 600. Talked of tyres, but one of the other essentials of a racing machine as well as of road machines is of course the oil, and the sponsors of this race don't require that competitors run on their oil, but all but 2 this year have done so, and the race has always been won on the sponsor's product, although there is an option to use any oil by competitors.
Rob Phillis still trying hard in second position, unwilling to bring himself down from the pace that he's been on. He's now only 30 seconds behind Malcolm Campbell. He's opening the gap to some 20 seconds on his teammate, bike 8, Len Willing. 18 seconds, in fact, is the gap.
2 3/4 laps remaining, and they're already 2 laps past last year's 367 record race distance. So they've averaged, with pit stops, about 57 seconds a lap. And those pit stops, of course, have included a massive number of tyre changes. The philosophy of the 6 hour once was to get through without a tyre change because they were feared, and a good one was regarded as being 40 seconds. A poor one could run easily to well over a minute. The philosophy now is that you've got to do one in around 20 seconds, and it's just about worth doing one at every stop and running a sufficiently sticky tyre to make up the time that extra adhesion gives, or the extra time in the pits gives, by running faster on the track. In fact, they've got them down now that it's taking very little, much longer time to change the tyre than it does to dump the fuel in the tanks. One minute, 35 seconds remain. The race order again: Rod Cox, Mal Campbell on bike number 2, coming up for their first ever Castrol 6-hour victory. There they are. Rob Phillis, Jeff French, second on bike 11, both of them VF 750 Hondas. Third place being held by Len Willing, Vince Sharp, again 750 Honda. Fourth place the Suzuki 1000 of Roger Hayes, Robert Holden. Fifth place by the Yamaha 900 of Stephen Gall, Richard Scott, and sixth place by Robert Scollier and Bernie Summers on 18, another Honda.
There's Mal Campbell giving the victory salute already, which is a bit premature. Only 1.8 seconds, incidentally, separates Len Willing from Roger Hayes at this moment for third position.
He's covered 371 laps. He has 35 seconds remaining, and he may have to do another. This will be 372, but he may be sent out to do a 373rd.
He's slowing right down in the hope that he won't be.
Because the flag doesn't necessarily get shown to the winner. It gets shown to at the end of 6 hours, which is 15 seconds away. I think Campbell's got it under control.
There's the checkered flag for Malcolm Campbell, winner of the Castrol 6-hour motorcycle race 1983. Malcolm and Rod Cox have done it.
And you can tell that it feels pretty good for the Tasmanian.
In second place will be Rob Phillis. There's Phillis.
Very well backed up, Rob Phillis, by Queenslander Jeff French.
Rob Phillis takes second place. And then we look for bike 8 and bike 11, and bike 6, Roger Hayes, and he's done it. Roger Hayes is through Len Willing. He's past him. Coming up to stop corner now, only one corner remaining. And here it comes. Roger Hayes has passed Len Willing and has taken third place for Suzuki in the Castrol 6 Hour, with Len Willing, the second of the Team Mattich bikes, in fourth position.
That was a heroic ride to the flag.
And here's Bob Vincent with Malcolm Campbell.
Thrown around and the kisses passed on. The champagne's about to be sprayed everywhere. But Malcolm's more interested in thanking his co-rider, most importantly Rod Cox. What a marvellous performance for Team Honda. Malcolm and Rod in your riding. A tremendous day.
Yeah, it was a great performance by Rod early in the race. A great performance by the bike. The team, the crew, had it worked out to perfection. I don't think there's an ounce of petrol left in it. Another lap we wouldn't have made it. And that's why we did it so easy, and that's why we're here.
The decision to let Rod go out first, when was that made?
Early this morning. We thought we'd let Rod run on the good tyres. I went the second session on a tyre that was only fit to do one session to try and build up our fuel consumption and get us through with only 3 stops, and which it did.
Were you a little bit worried going out with that tyre and the condition it was in?
Yeah, well, actually, when I went out, I thought I'd be back in the next lap because I could hardly handle. Nearly fell off about 5 times in a lap. But gradually got used to it, and the Pirellis were really good all day. The Honda was magnificent. This one was sealed straight out of the crate. A great effort by the bike itself, and all Honda's co-sponsors, Castrol, AJCL, and any I've missed. I've probably missed a few.
Well, what do you think of your co-rider here? Come over here, Rod.
Yeah, come on, you've got to...
You've got to say a few words too as well, mate.
Yeah. Well, it's good.
your first win?
Yeah, wrapped in being back together with Mal. We rode together here a few years ago. Had a bit of problems, but we made it this time. I'd like to thank Bennett Honda for allowing me to ride with Honda Australia.
That was a late decision and a very lucky one for you, it seems.
Yeah, it turned out good.
Might have been lucky for me. Got rid of some of the opposition.
Well done. I'm just about to call in Tony Bennett, who on behalf of Castrol is going to present the winning team with their trophy.
Thank you very much, Bob. It gives Castrol Australia great pride to present the Castrol 6 Hour trophy to the winning entrant, Team Honda Australia, and those 2 great professional riders today, Malcolm Campbell and Rod Cox. Yay. Our congratulations.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Tony, and from Borg Warner, Brian Marnie to present the trophy for the winner of the 750 class, and it's the same team.
Well, I've been told that I've got to be very quick, so on behalf of Borg Warner Financial Services, Rod and Mal, I'd like to congratulate you very sincerely on a brilliant run. Thank you very much.
Good, thank you.
Well, the accolades have now been passed on, and I don't think that we can finish today's broadcast without congratulating the efforts of all the teams who took part in today's Castrol 6 Hour. I'm about to be covered by champagne here. Well, that's good. He stepped the other way. Particularly the Frank Mattich team Pirelli, which finished second and third, and down to 6th position Roger Hayes, and of course Graham Crosby along with Mick Cole. But that's it for the Castrol 6 Hour 1983 on behalf of ABC Sport.